having one of the worst reading years of my life, but I've decided this summer things are going to change. And over the past week, things have changed. I feel like actually half of this reading wrap up is from the last week in which I was like, you know what? We're going to have what I've decided to dub Spicy Book Summer. Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name is Michelle, and today I'm going to be giving you a wrap up of everything I read in April and May. I've been having one of the worst reading years of my life. I've only read like 23 books this whole year, and April was the worst month I've had thus far this year. I only read 2 books, which is just like not acceptable for me. You know, I know everyone reads at their own pace, but like I really feel I am at my best when I'm reading at least a book or 2 every single week. 2 books in a month is a little like sad. It's a little sad. They were excellent books, and I do want to talk about them, and so I've just kind of lumped them in to May's list, because in May, I decided to turn things around. At the very end of the month, this like last week, I read like 4 books, because I was like, you know what? Even though like some of the books I really want to read are like a little bit more in depth, like I want to read Aweke Emeze's Little Rot, and I want to read Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors, and I want to read Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. These books that require like a little bit more from me. Like maybe all I can handle, maybe all I have the capacity for right now is some Kindle Unlimited romances, and that's okay. Like I know an alien romance is never going to be my new favorite book. It's just not. It's never going to be like a perfect 5-star book. I mean, I like say that and like it might happen one day, but like the chances are much lower than if I'm reading something like that's like really acclaimed and has like a little bit more substance and meat to it. Like that's much more likely to be like a new absolute favorite book, and I want to be reading those books, but like sometimes you gotta have the brainless books. But we're not there yet. We're gonna start at the beginning when things were the roughest of times in April, when I finished 2 books, both so excellent. Let's start with the first one, and that was The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland. I love Crystal Sutherland. Her last book, House Apollo, is like one of my all-time favorites. They are YA horror novels, that's what she writes, but I am not someone who reads a lot of YA, and I still like deeply love these books. This one follows 3 young women who all live in England, although one of them is Irish, I believe. They're all teenagers, and they're all connected to witchcraft in some way. And witchcraft in this book is like very like dark in terms of how it works is only women can practice it. And in order to like practice witchcraft in any capacity, you have to essentially like attach a demon to your soul, and it gives you the power to do like one thing. So it is this like very high cost sort of magic in which this demon like really like zaps years off of your life and kind of makes your life kind of like chronically miserable going forward, but it gives you this power of some capacity, and each woman has like a different power. That is kind of like the setup, and we're following these 3 women, or these 3 young women. They're like 17, and each of them have like a different connection to this. One of them is like grew up in like a coven of witches, and she's the one who like writes these spells, who like writes and works with women to like give them the powers, that she like carefully writes the spells that like enact whatever powers they get. We have one girl who has like a demon improperly attached to her, and so she's like really suffering. And then we have another girl whose sister has recently died. And what is essentially happening is there's been this string of murders in which all of these young women who have become like witches, who have attached these demons to their souls, have been being like systematically murdered, one right after the other. The young women, the 3 young women that we're following in the story, are trying to kind of like uncover what is happening to them and to like keep themselves safe, since they're all 3 pretty connected to this like story. It is so good. It reminds me, it has like a lot of the vibes of like a mid-2000s like supernatural TV show, like Vampire Diaries or like Buffy the Vampire Slayer sort of like vibes. It is also like pretty dark, and at parts like kind of freaked me out a little bit. Not like super scary, not like, you know, had to sleep with the lights on, but like definitely like there's some parts that are freaky. If demons are a little freaky to you, which they are to me, a little freaky there. Also, there's a guy murdering people. Never good news. And like it definitely gets spooky, but it was so good. It was so compelling. I loved the relationships between all of the young women. There's like a little like sapphic romance that buds, and it is really twisty as well. Really, really deeply, profoundly enjoyable. Would highly recommend if any of that sounds good to you. The Invocations. Then I read another book that I really loved and enjoyed, and that is The Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings. This book surprised me, not because I enjoyed it. I kind of like expected to enjoy it. I love the Magnolia Parks series by Jessa Hastings, and I also really liked the Never book by Jessa Hastings. But this was a Jessa Hastings like standalone contemporary fiction novel, and I kind of didn't know what to expect going into it. It is called The Conditions of Will, and so I thought it was a story about someone falling in love with a boy named Will. There is no boy named Will in this book. It's Conditions of the Will, because it is the story of Georgia, and Georgia grew up in South Carolina in this like very religiously connected family. I don't know if her father was like the pastor of a church or if they were just like deeply connected to it. They were like a wealthy Southern family, deeply connected to a Pentecostal church. And she gets sent away when she's a teen to go to boarding school in London, and then she's just like raised in London, and now she's like in her mid-20s, and she's kind of spent the last like 10 years in London, and she is a body language expert. Like, she is a psychology student who specifically focuses in body language, and so she can read people incredibly well. And she really like never goes home. She has a really tense relationship with her family, and she's home though for the first time in a long time because it is her father's funeral. And she and her younger brother are both kind of like the black sheep of the family. He is gay, which is like not accepted in their church, and then like I said, she was like kind of sent away. Well, you find out why in the novel, and they're coming back and they're trying to figure out like what this looks like. Georgia's trying to like figure out what it feels like to grieve her father, this man that she didn't really know very well and didn't like very much, who treated her kind of poorly, and how to like interact with her mother, who similarly, and then her older siblings who she's had tense relationships with as well. They were like the two golden children of the family. And she arrives back, and pretty quickly she becomes kind of enamored with her younger brother's like sobriety coach, who he's brought with him. So her younger brother has recently like entered recovery and has brought his like sober living coach, I think, with him to this funeral. And him and Georgia, his name is Sam Penny, and him and Georgia like kind of develop a romance, which is complicated by the fact that obviously Sam is here to like support George's brother. This story kind of goes a lot of places, and it like really beautifully and interestingly explores like religious trauma and family dynamics and what it feels like to grow up and have your beliefs change and evolve really beautifully. I loved this book because I think Jessa Hastings comes under a lot of fire for her personal beliefs, because her husband was/is, I don't know what his current affiliation is, with like the Hillsong church community, which has like a lot of, it's Justin Bieber and Hailey Bieber's church as well. There's like a lot of conversation around it because it's this large celebrity church, and like their relationship with like homophobia and like various different like political things. It's an evangelical church. You can kind of see where this goes. And Jessa has never really like directly addressed it. And in this book, she like really deeply, and you can tell really personally, kind of unpacks her relationship with like Christianity and religion. And I just found it like really intensely beautiful. I really enjoyed it. It was like much slower and more thoughtful. I kind of was expecting, and I don't know why, I always go into these books, I think it's because of the way they're marketed. They're marketed in this way that they like feel like they're going to be like very frothy and dramatic and like full of just like a giggly fun time. But this book really, I felt like, although there's like definitely like soap opera levels of drama, there is this like tenderness and this heart underneath it all that is so well done. And I also think Jessa Hastings' writing is just like so uniquely her. It like always takes me like a second to like get into it when I first started Jessa Hastings' book, but then you can like so clearly imagine the character, because the character comes through so vividly through her writing. And I think she's incredibly talented. I am a huge Jessa Hastings fan. I think she is doing something incredibly unique in the like contemporary fiction space, the popular fiction space, and I will always be a fan. I think sometimes she gets tossed aside as kind of like a trashy bubblegum pop book, and I just don't think that's true. I think there's a lot more depth to Jessa's books than people give her credit for. The next thing I read, now we're in May, so this was all I read in April. The next thing I read in May was I read Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. This book follows Samantha and Xavier. I had to like look up their names, and if you had given me 100 guesses, I don't think I would have guessed either of their names, being Samantha or Xavier. I like truly don't remember that. they kind of have this chance meeting. He's a vet and like a veterinarian, and she comes into his vet office with like a kitten she's found, and they have this like weird encounter in which he's like being super grumpy, and she is like, I'm gonna save this kitten, and he's like, it needs like major massive surgery, like you'd be better off putting it down. Okay, well, the love interest tells us to put a kitten down. Hard to deal with. But from there, she like saves this kitten. She does like a GoFundMe. She raises enough money to save the kitten. He gets surgery. He comes back in like for this like second meeting. In the second meeting, he asks her out, and they have this like one date, and it goes like super well. It goes incredible. They have like great chemistry. It goes awesome. And then something happens. Something happens pretty immediately after the date that like changes everything, spins everything on its head, and we're left in like kind of the lurch. And so these people who have like really good chemistry have some incredibly real life events that are keeping them apart from each other. And it's like how they overcome those. It's like less about their interpersonal dynamics, because those are like pretty good from the start. They like clearly love each other. Well, maybe not love each other initially, but they clearly have chemistry and they grow to love each other pretty quickly. But it's about how they make that work in this life situations they're both living with. Both of them have pretty complex life situations and pretty heavy stuff. I would definitely look up content warnings for this book. And also, I didn't mention it, but like definitely look up content warnings for Conditions of Will as well. Both of these books have heavier themes that are delved into like pretty directly. So definitely check out content warnings. They're both dealing with some like very heavy stuff with their families and with like their history and also with their present situations. And it's just like how they work through that. I don't know. It was really cute. It was fun. I feel like Abby Jimenez does a really good job of balancing kind of like the heaviness of like really difficult life situations with like humor and lightness. And I enjoyed it. It's probably not my favorite Abby Jimenez. It's definitely not my favorite. My favorite Abby Jimenez is Part of Your World, but it was good. And then I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This, of course, is the newest in the Hunger Games series. It is the prequel that follows Haymitch. I was so excited to read this book. I was like, oh my gosh, how exciting, a new Hunger Games book. And almost immediately when I started it, I was like, oh, this is actually going to be like a terrible time. Not because Suzanne did a bad job writing it. Obviously, Suzanne is incredibly talented, and her books are incredibly good and thoughtful and well done, and I think translate incredibly well to like the adults who are reading them, who read like Hunger Games when they were children, and also like the children currently reading them. But we know what happens to Haymitch in terms of like, he obviously survives his games. He is the winner of his games. It is games with a double reaping. So there's, instead of 24 tributes, there are 48. Also, Haymitch is like so broken by what happens in his games that he is just like having a terrible time by the time we meet him in the Hunger Games. And watching that all unfold and kind of like knowing that his book has a sad ending, like it has to lead to where Haymitch is at the end, was such a difficult thing. Again, not because the book was bad. I think the book was incredibly compelling. It was just like, for me, I was like, oh my gosh, yay, Hunger Games. And then I was like, oh, this book is so heavy and dark, and it's about like government's power over people, and we're watching like children die as the Hunger Games continue on, and it was just like heavier than I expected. Really good, really like readable, obviously really interesting. I think it, for me, it felt like a little less directly political than the other books. I reread Hunger Games like fairly recently when I read Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I reread the whole series, and those books are just like so directly and profoundly political. This one felt a little bit more personal about Haymitch. There is some conversation around propaganda, but it's probably gorgeously done, okay? But it's probably on my least favorite end of the Hunger Games books for me. Still a great book. Still recommend it if you've read the Hunger Games books, but it for me, it just like wasn't a necessary addition to the canon. Although I did enjoy it. Not mad about it. Then I read The Forest of Missing Girls by me, Michelle Geraldis. I actually did my final read through of this book. Normally I don't count. You have to read a book like a gajillion times when you're publishing it. But this read through was my like proofread to just like check any last minute errors. And I really got to read it as a reader this time. And I like enjoyed it. I was like, oh my gosh, there are parts of this that are like pretty good. You, as an author, for me at least, there are a lot of times where I'm like, this book sucks, I hate it. And to like finally see it all come together and to read it and be like, yes, okay, is really exciting. The premise of this book, if you've not heard me talk about it before, is it follows this young woman named Leah who moves back home after she lives in LA for like 2 years after college. She's pretty young. She's like 23. She moves back home after she breaks up with her boyfriend and no longer has somewhere to live. And her family lives in this house that is in the forest. Like, it's not too far away from town, but it's like deep in the forest. And this forest is a little weird. And something that is particularly strange about this forest is it has a tendency to have young women go missing in it. And when a young woman goes missing in the forest, she is never found. And pretty soon after Leah moves home, she is there when her sister's best friend disappears, like, out of their backyard. Like, her sister's best friend is in their backyard one minute and gone the next. And the book kind of follows her exploring the woods and her family's connections in particular to the forest and trying to figure out what happened to Maddie, this girl who disappeared. It is speculative. I'm getting like first reviews are starting to come in because ARCs are out in the world now. And I will warn you that it is a thriller-ish, but it is like speculative. Like, weird things are happening in the woods, and it's also a little bit slower. Like, it's more of like a dark fairy tale vibe than like a super edge of your seat sort of thriller. And also, like, weird stuff is happening in the woods. Like, weird make-believe stuff is happening in the woods. Like some magic, okay? So if you're going to read this book, prepare yourself for that. Okay, here's where things took a turn, where I said, you know what? We need to just be reading. And it doesn't matter what we're reading. We just need to be reading. Our eyeballs need to be going over words. So this is when I decided, you know what, Nichelle, you just need to read. I also have a little bit more time on my hands. My schedule kind of follows the school schedule. And so come Memorial Day, my like day job work becomes substantially less busy. I had a little bit extra time on my hands, which also I think helped the situation. But I was like, you know what? I need to be reading. I need to be making use of my Kindle Unlimited membership, and I need to be reading those books. And the first thing I read was my favorite Bad Decision by Elizabeth O'Rourke. I've read another book by her called Waking Olivia that I really enjoyed, but I actually read this one because Beach Reads and Bubbly, who's one of my favorite people to follow on Instagram, recommended it, and I did really enjoy it, but I have some caveats. I'm going to tell you about the book and why I enjoyed it, and then I will give you the caveats, because there are some pretty big like icks in this book that I think could be deal breakers for you if they would bother you. So the premise of this book is this young woman who is like wealthy, super wealthy. Her father owns, I don't remember what industry they're in, but they own like a very large company, and she works within the company. And she is supposed to start a position as the CFO of the company. Maybe not the CFO, but like in the finance department of the company, a pretty high up finance position in the company. But before she does, I think it's a magazine. I think they own like a magazine media conglomerate. Her family does. But before she does, her father sends her on this trip to Kilimanjaro. And he says, you're going to hike Kilimanjaro. And Kilimanjaro is the largest mountain in Africa, and it doesn't require like a lot of like mountaineering, but it is like a pretty long hike. Like, it takes place over the course of like many days. You have to climb to like pretty high elevation, and she's not like really trained for this, although she's like in good shape. She like recently ran a marathon, but her dad is like, you have to do this first, and then you can write the article about it. But she knows it is about more than that, and part of it is she is going to be engaged pretty shortly, she knows, to this boyfriend who her dad does not approve of because he's like boring and the worst. And she knows her father like wants her to like take a look at her life and her decisions. She arrives at Kilimanjaro, and like the worst case scenario has happened. One of her mortal enemies is there, and this mortal enemy just happens to be her sister's ex-boyfriend. This boy that like is like her sister's like the one that got away. They spent like one summer together in the Hamptons, her sister and this boy, and she was there as well, her older sister. And he like broke her heart at the end of the summer. And her older sister is now like married, but her marriage is like really unhappy, and she still like thinks a lot about this boy. And so obviously, as a good sister would, she is like kind of turned him into this nemesis. And he happens to be hiking Kilimanjaro as well. And he is going on the same path. So they are like hiking Kilimanjaro together, and they're like enemies, obviously. But obviously this boy like maybe is like less of her enemy than she originally thought. Interesting. And then like a romance sparks from there. It is very cute. I loved the premise of the story. I loved the story itself. Okay, let's get into the butts. Let's get into the icks of this story. Let's do the small one first. The small one is that our girl's name is Kit. The boy calls her Kitten the whole time. Like back when they're enemies. I'm sorry, Kitten is just like not an appropriate nickname for someone and who has not like, you have to consent to the nickname of Kitten. You have to consent to it. Some nicknames you can give freely and willy-nilly, and no one has to like formally agree to it. I feel like we need to have a formal agreement if you're going to call someone Kitten. Kitten is just like it's a little too much for me. to be just calling someone that. You know who does nicknames like really well? I was thinking about this as I was reading the book and cringing every time I read Kitten, because I'm someone who likes I love a nickname. I love a hero who gives the heroine a nickname. Mariana Zapata does it so well. Mariana Zapata does it so well. In Kulti, he calls her like Schnecki. It's like the German word for snail. And you like learn why he calls her that. So good. Mariana Zapata does a nickname well. Kitten was not good. The bigger red flag, that reflecting upon it, I wound up cutting a half star off of my rating at the end of the day because I just like couldn't fully get over this, is the summer where our hero meets our heroine for the first time, where he's dating her older sister. He is 22 and she is 17. Okay. And we come to find out, this is like a baby spoiler, so if you don't want to be spoiled, skip ahead. But we come to find out he had a crush on her when she was 17, like a pretty like substantial crush. And it's why he winds up breaking things off with her sister at the end of the summer, because he can't be around the 17-year-old anymore. And like the age gap is actually not that big. Like it's only 5 years. In the present day timeline, I think she's like 28 and he's like 33. Totally reasonable. I'm sorry though, like I don't know if I could get over the ick of a 22-year-old being like having like such a major crush on a 17-year-old. Like she's about to be a senior in high school and he has graduated college. The age gap is so substantial. And I don't know. And maybe like if you're just like not around 17-year-olds a lot, this wouldn't like occur to you. But I work with like middle and high schoolers. And so I am around 17-year-olds and I love my 17-year-old girls. They are like so much fun to talk to. They're so interesting. They're so smart. They're so funny. They're children. Okay. Like I will have conversations with them in which they'll be like, I can't understand why my parents think that me sneaking out and driving my friend around, even though I only have my learner's permit, is such a big deal and why I'm grounded for 2 weeks. Like their brains are just like still a little mushy. They're still a little soft, still a little gooey. Actions and consequences haven't really sunk in. And like I know they won't get a prefrontal cortex for a while, but like it's really gooey at this point. Like they're kids. And like 22-year-olds are graduating from college. They are like entering the real workforce. They are like they just like are so much more solidified than 17-year-olds, even if it's only a 5-year age gap. So much happens in those 5 years. And I don't know if personally I could ever get over the fact the 22-year-old version of this boy was in love with a 17-year-old version of me. Like that's just a little icky to me. It is a little icky. He didn't act on it. Like nothing happened between them. But the fact that he was like really crushing hard on her just made me have some questions. I still really enjoyed the book. I loved the premise. Kilimanjaro was like such a fun setting. It's not the full book, I will let you know. Kilimanjaro is only like the first half, but like it was really great. Really great. I'm going to go slightly out of order here because I want to put these two books together. Part of me doesn't want to tell you this because it's a little embarrassing for me, but I'm going to be honest with you. The next book I read was called Using Fejo. Fejo? I don't know. He's an alien, so there's no way for me to know the proper pronunciation, by Victoria Aveline. And then I also read Resisting Maxu by Victoria Aveline. Books 5 and 6 in the Clicaean series. I read books 1 through 4 in the series a couple years ago, and then this popped up in my Kindle Unlimited recommendations, and I said, yes, this is exactly what I need. This is a series. It's an alien romance, okay? All these human women have been like, they have been essentially like imported to this planet by like some bad guys, but then the good guys like took over. They get on this planet and they realize that they can it's a very similar premise to Planet Barbarians. But they realize essentially that they can activate like the mating they can activate like the mating marks of the Kleans, which means that like they're like compatible with them. And like if you like it's Ice Planet Barbarians that they live in a technologically advanced society, is what I will tell you. That is the premise of this series. It's a good one, okay? It is like the spice levels. I would say it is not like, I mean, it's high spice, but not like that's all it is. Like there's plot, especially towards the sixth book. I was like, plot is plotting. We've got some like big world stuff happening towards the end there. I'm like, oh my goodness, what's going on? Yeah. I read both of those. I read each of them in 24 hours. I'm trying to read more. Trying to increase my knowledge. Trying to get bigger brains, okay? In between those books, I actually finished Misery by Stephen King. In a completely different vein of things. I did finish Misery by Stephen King. I've been reading this book for a while, and I think that maybe affected my overall feelings on it, because I didn't love it as much as I had anticipated. Initially, I remember like kind of the first few days I was reading this book, when I got through like the first chunk, being like so compelled by the story. But by the end, I was like, wrap it up, let's get it moving. I'm like really reliant on the fact that I don't think Stephen King will watch this video. Don't tell him about this. It's like still good. Like, Stephen King is masterful. I think some of the reflections on like what it is like to write fiction and what it is like to be an author were really interesting, and like a really interesting insight into how I imagine Stephen King like understands his role as a writer. But for me, the story did drag a little towards the end. I think the beginning is so compelling. If you're not familiar, I like probably should tell you what this book is about. I assumed you knew. If you're not familiar with the story of Misery, it is about this author whose name I can't remember, who crashes his car, and he's picked up by this woman, and this woman happens to be his number one biggest fan, and she brings him back to his house and kind of like nurses him back to health. She's essentially kidnapped him, and she wants him to write a new book in the series that she loves. And the last book, he killed off her favorite character, Misery. And she's like, no, bring Misery back to life and write the next book in the series. And it is about him trying to live with this woman who is not well mentally, who is mentally unwell, and also like writing this book for her, and kind of all the twists and turns that takes. And it is like very claustrophobic. Like, we spend most of this book in like one room in this woman's house. Sometimes we leave like the bedroom and we go into like the main room, but we're in this woman's house for almost the entire book, with like a few exceptions. And it feels very claustrophobic, but she feels so scary. And there are so many moments in which you are like truly like turning the pages, trying to like on the edge of your seat. Like, Stephen King is a master of that. But we also get like excerpts of the book he is working on, that our author is working on, and those parts were my least favorite. I was like, I don't care about Misery. I don't know her. And the book he's working on is like hecka weird, and like it's got some like weird vibes. They go to Africa, and I don't think it's a great representation of Africa. Anyway, I didn't love it. It's not my favorite Stephen King I've read. I can definitely see, I think you can see Stephen King's like mastery of the craft of writing in this book, but it's just like not my favorite of his works. And then finally, a book I actually haven't finished yet, but I will finish. It's the 31st today. So by the time May is done, I am almost 100% positive I will be finished with Problematic Summer Romance by Ali Hazelwood. This is her latest release. Girlie is churning out books almost faster than I can read them. This is her second one this year. This one for me, again, I haven't finished it yet, so it could turn things around, could be different. I will like insert a voice note if I have like drastically different feelings. But the premise of this one is we are also following another age gap. This one feels tremendously less problematic to me than my favorite bad decision, because it doesn't start until the younger character is like 20. The relationship doesn't even like begin to be like a thing that exists at all until the younger character is 20. The older one is 35 at the time. There's a 15-year age gap, and then this story is actively taking place when she is 23 and he is 38. But like they first like encounter each other when, not first encounter, but like first kind of develop any sort of like friendship relationship when she's 20. It is the younger sibling of the boy from Not in Love by Ali Hazelwood, and the basic premise of the story is we are at the wedding of Eli, that character, Eli and Rue. They're getting married, and they're getting married in this like villa in Sicily, in Italy. Oh my gosh, the setting is just gorgeous. And it's so fun because Ali Hazelwood, if you don't know, is actually Italian. She like grew up in Italy. I don't think she moved to America until she was like in college. And so I assume she has like a pretty decent familiarity with the area. And like an Italian summer is always just going to be like the dreamiest setting to read about in a book. Okay, it is. Especially they're like on the sea and this like gorgeous villa. And it's so much fun. Anyway, it is this like tiny villa. There's only like 12 of them staying there for like the week leading up to the wedding. And of course we have our main girlie whose name is Meg. And then we have this man whose name is Connor. And Connor is Eli's best friend. Him and Meg have like an interesting, tense relationship. They were friends for a few years there. And then Connor like broke contact and said like we cannot speak to each other anymore, but like clearly the vibes are there, clearly they have chemistry between them. And his like big reason that he's like we can't be together is because he is so much older than Meg. Like he is 15 years older than her, and he feels like it would be an inappropriate relationship, and he's like trying to be respectful of like his friend. It is like really enjoyable. I don't think it's gonna be my favorite Ali Hazelwood. My favorite is probably Love on the Brain, Or maybe Love Theater. No, it's, or maybe Deep End. I loved Deep End so much. Deep End was so good. And we do get a little Deep End cameo, which was delightful. But I am enjoying it. And like, truly, like I said, any book that takes place in the Italian summer is going to be a fave. And I haven't gotten to the last, I think I'm at like 75%. And that part could like sway me and make this like rank higher. Like, truly, that's kind of the best parts of a romance book sometimes. I feel like it'll probably only get better. That's my feeling on this book. I'm enjoying it. Love the setting. Love all the characters. That is everything I read in the months of April and May. I'm so excited to be reading again. We're going to keep this up. I've decided that we're having Spicy Girl Summer in which I'm just going to read Kindle Unlimited romances. And not just read Kindle Unlimited romances, but like that's going to be my bread and butter. We're just going to be reading literally whatever sounds delightful on Kindle Unlimited. Oh, I'm also actively reading right now the Songbird and the Stoneheart, the like newest book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series, which is good because I do plan to do recaps for those pretty shortly here because we have the fifth book in that fifth book. We have the next book of that series coming out pretty soon. So I'm like pretty actively reading that and like somewhere in the middle of that book too. But I'm reading that slower because I'm working on a side project with that one as I read it. More coming soon. Thanks so much, girlies. Hope you're having a great one. Let me know if you've read any absolutely delightful books recently. I always want to know. Even though my TBR is 600 books long, that is not an exaggeration, I am always in the market to add more books to that list. So let me know if you've read anything so delightful. Have you read the latest Allie Hazelwood? I need to know. And I will see you in the next video. Have a great one. Bye.